Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield, and I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, joined as always by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle, who, Ian, a lot of movement in Boston this trade deadline. The Patriots made a couple of moves in training camp, making some waiver moves. The Celtics even made some transactions today, and that's what we're here to talk about, right? That's where the action is on this trade deadline day, right? That's what's going on.
I thought we were just going to spend an hour talking about Luis Arias because that's all that happened.
Wait, what did Luis Arias do?
He got traded to the Red Sox, I thought. Or am I Arias?
No. Oh, Luis Arias. Yeah, different guy.
Yeah,
different
that's
guy.
the same guy.
No,
it's the same guy.
Yeah,
it was a
from
weird
a team
day
in the upper Midwest.
Yeah, it's a weird day.
It was a very weird day. We're going to talk all about that.
We were waiting around for a lot of nothing.
Yeah. My productivity got tanked for absolutely nothing, and I'm not happy about it because I'm busy as hell this week. But that said, it is what it is. So thank you all for listening in. We're going to talk trade deadline. We're going to talk about other transactions lately. We're going to talk about some promotions, some releases, some signings, and we're going to get to your emails. But of course, if you want to support the show before we get into all of that, you can do it a few ways. First of all, you can rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you listen to the show. You can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. And by the way, everybody, thank you for supporting the SoxProspects.com donation drive. Not only did we meet our goal this year of $9,000, we actually beat our stretch goal of $10,000 raised. Thank you all very, very much. We are already planning ways to use that to better serve you, the Sox Prospects reading and listening public, with some neat things we're going to have coming up. Hopefully, knock on the wood, hopefully it all works out. So thank you again. It's patreon.com/SoxProspects. And of course, as far as emails, you can send them to podcast at SoxProspects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. But without further ado, let's get into talking about all of the non-action that was this trade deadline for the Boston Red Sox. Ian, what the hell is going on with the Red Sox in your mind? What is your take on how they approached this deadline? Because I think the people need an explanation.
I mean, I think that I don't know why Chaim Bloom didn't say this in his press conference afterwards, but I think it's pretty clear that they're just banking on the pitchers coming back healthy, who are currently injured. And it's Trevor Story. And that's kind of what they're viewing as their big trade deadline acquisitions. Luis Arias, who they did trade, they got for Bradley Blaylock, is a decent, buy. It fits the model of what Chaim Bloom is targeted. Someone who was good in the past, but had a down year this year, maybe, and you buy low on the distressed asset in the hope that they can regain their past form. And if he does, I think it's a shrewd move given the issues they have at second base, potentially even as soon as this year. But otherwise, they just stood pat, and I don't have an issue with not buying, but if you're not going to buy, I don't get why you didn't sell, given the price that especially starting pitching was going for. And with Paxton, he's someone they definitely could have got a couple legitimate pieces for. With Adam Duvall, you could at least get a decent piece for. They had some guys that they could have moved, and instead it kind of just they're running with the same team. And I don't know how that's going to go over in the clubhouse. Obviously, the guys in there were talking about how they wanted to add a pitcher to help kind of boost that team, and it's got to be tough for them to just feel like they're just running with the same team they currently had when everyone else went out, especially the teams around them, and made pretty big moves.
Well, you look at the comments from Chaim Bloom at his press availability after the deadline passed, which, by the way, they set it up for like 15 minutes after the deadline, which is kind of wild. But his comments are telling. I mean, he quote, "Look at the odds. We know what the odds are. We don't have a playoff spot right now." Adding that he still senses as much confidence in the clubhouse as there's been. And then, quote, "Even after these losses, I think there's a confidence in there and a good feeling in there, but we know we've got work to do." He referred multiple times to them being, quote, underdogs, but they didn't want, but he also apparently said they didn't want to cut corners by making a short-sighted move that wouldn't help them achieve their ultimate goals. I mean, he's made the comments a bunch of times about their North Star is not selling out to win now. He says, quote, just because someone would be a great addition doesn't mean the trade it would take to acquire them would be a good trade. It doesn't mean it would help us get to where we need to go, Bloom said. Obviously, it takes two to tango, and we didn't find those matches. He said that they were on the phone all day. He said, quote, we're ready to roll with this group. We like where our arrow is pointing, and hopefully we can do some special things the rest of the way, and certainly feel very confident we'll be able to continue building on this next year and beyond. And I mean, look, I don't know if you agree with this, but reading between the lines here, Ian, it seems like he's basically admitting that this is not their year. And one trend, I think, to put some MLB context on this, and I don't know if you saw the same thing, teams that are competing for those play-in wild card spots are not treating them like previous when it was 4 teams getting in. Teams treated it like if you get in, who knows what could happen, right? But with the expansion of the playoffs, if you are in that play-in game, it's so much harder to make it through that teams are not treating that the same way they are treating, immediately starting in the division series.
And I'm not sure I agree with that, because you look at some of the teams that were the most active today. Miami Marlins, they're going to be in a wild card game. The San Diego Padres are like 5 games out of a wild card game, and they bought. The Diamondbacks went out and added. The Brewers added a bunch of guys. Granted, they can still win the division. The Phillies went out and added. So I don't think, and that was just in the National League. And then you look in the American League, the 2 biggest teams that went out and added, I would argue, are the Rangers and the Astros. And both of them, one of them is going to end up in the wild card. So,
well, yeah, I mean, they could, you could conceivably catch Tampa though, and I think that's the value proposition. It's if you're chasing that wild card spot, like the Angels. I mean, I guess the Angels added, so there's that.
The Angels did too, yeah, and the
Angels
Angels
added.
too.
The
and
Yankees
the Angels are
didn't
behind
do
the Red Sox.
The Yankees didn't do a whole lot. The Mariners sold. Right,
Yeah.
they straight sold, so they're
Right.
punting, even though they're 3.5 back because they're behind the Red Sox.
They didn't really punt though. They just traded their closer, and they have Andres Munoz, who's
I guess
probably
that's true,
just
but
as good. So they didn't really punt.
I mean, in the NL, like the teams you're mentioning, like Philly will be in a. I mean, they're not going to catch the Braves, but they're holding a playoff spot, which is different than like, I mean, the Miami added their half a game back. The Cubs added in their 3.5 back. So fair.
But you look at Philly, Miami, the Brewers, the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, the Padres all added. There's like only two spots for those teams at most.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
So I don't think it's that. I think it's just, I just don't think the Red Sox were willing to pay the price that players were going for. They were obviously not going to go over the luxury tax too, which limited who was kind of in their player pool of available targets.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they just decided that, running with the crew that they have is the best move. And I don't know. I just think that if you're not confident in your playoff chances this year, it was a really good opportunity to get some legitimate assets for the future with Paxton and Adam Duvall. But I guess, and maybe even Pavetta, but I guess the flip side of the argument is that if you do that, you lose the team completely. Like you can't sell your best guys, and you can't lose the fan base, especially over a team that's played pretty well for the last couple of weeks. But I just think it's tough because if they did what they did and just added one starting pitcher, I think the narrative would be completely different.
Yeah.
It's just not doing anything except for a minor move to get Luis Urias. It's just you got to pick a direction at some point. And I just I look at the prospects they have. They don't have room for all these guys. Like coming into Rule 5 next year, there's a decent chance they're not going to protect some pretty good prospects. I look at just the pitchers, for example. You have to protect Luis Perales. You're going to have to protect Wickham and Gonzalez. You're going to have to protect Shane Drohan. That's 3 guys right there. And I would argue that none of those 3 are going to be ready to help the big league team next year until late in the season at the earliest. Maybe Drohan, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves like Angel, but that doesn't take into account Angel Bastardo, Ryan Fernandez, Luis. I don't think Guerrero's actually eligible next season.
Guerrero's
Ryan
not.
Fernandez.
Well, I've got her up right here. I can give you the names. Like Angel Bastardo jumps out as a guy who could get popped. Not a pitcher, but Brian Urbonesi is going to be an interesting decision.
Well, but I think the point, it's starting with the pitchers, because my point is just that.
Well, I mean, I'm going through. Yeah. Oh no, I'm going. So just to do the pitchers then. Juan Encarnacion, no. But like you said, Drohan, Fernandez, no question. Grant Gambrell is kind of interesting. You're not going to protect him. Justin Hageman, who we're going to talk about in a minute, who you just acquired, who's in AAA. Then there's kind of a dry spell alphabetically. Paralysis, you're protecting. AJ Politi got picked last year. Not that he's big shakes, but
Yeah,
like
but you don't care. You don't care if he gets picked again.
I understand. I'm just saying I'm just saying the guys that could potentially get picked. That's probably most of them. Oh, Ryan Zephyr-John's the other big one who could get popped. I could see Zephyr-John getting popped, which is not a huge deal, but
the point to me is like you have a lot of guys there that you're not going to protect 6, 7 pitchers for next offseason.
Of course not.
You're going to protect the 4 that we mentioned. You're going to protect Paralysis, Drohan, Wickelman, maybe Fernandez, maybe Bastardo, and Bonucci. I don't know what you do with him now. He's playing his way into getting protected.
He is.
But that's a lot. Like you have depth to trade from there.
Mhm.
And I look at what's happened with like Matthew Lugo, Nico Cavadas, even Edinson Paulinho to an extent. They've had a lot of guys that teams would be interested in who have just gone up a level and just really regressed. And I think at some point you need to trust your internal evaluations and be like, this is one of our guys. Or if you don't believe in a guy and he's performing in other teams like him, you got to pull the trigger at some point. You know, you can't just hoard all these assets and watch them start to depreciate. Because the closer you get to the big leagues, the more time teams have to evaluate guys, and guys who you at one point you could have got value for, you won't be able to. And you're seeing that. And I think the best example of that right now is Bobby Dahlbeck. He's someone you could have traded 2 or 3 years ago and gotten a decent piece for, and now no one wants it. That's why he's still on the 40-man roster.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that they're going to run into that issue where they're going to have to, kind of like what happened this offseason, where Thad Ward was left unprotected. Not that he's been good this year, but that part of that's because he had to go to the majors when he shouldn't have even been in the majors.
It's because he's not ready. Yeah, exactly.
And you're going to get left in a position where you're going to lose assets for nothing when you could have easily flipped 2 or 3 of these guys for one player who could help you. And I just like it's great to build up the depth in the farm system, but at some point you need to have your guys. And I think another guy like that is Nick York. Nick York's had a weird year to me. He's super young for AA, which I understand, and there's still definitely upside. And if you truly believe he's a long-term, potential everyday second baseman, then it's great to not trade him. But if your internal evaluations aren't that, then you got to try and shop that player to get something. Well, his value is still pretty high. And that's just my concern, is that by trying to build this like long-term sustainable contender, what you're doing is you're missing an opportunity to move from your positions of depth. And I think this trade deadline was a pretty good time where you could have flipped. And I just look at like the Michael Lorenzen trade from Philadelphia is the one that stands out to me. The guy that the Tigers got is like a little second baseman with some maybe a little feel for hits. Scouts aren't not a very good prospect. If you offered them Brainer Bonucci or even maybe Edinson Paulinho for Michael Lorenzen, that might have gotten it done. What's the harm in doing that? Bring in another arm, show the team, hey, we got this guy. I mean, Lorenzen's on like 20 innings straight without giving up a run. Bring in someone who's performing well and say, hey, we're going to make a run at it. And instead, you just you do nothing. And I just think it's tough when you've been playing as well as you have. If you make that one move and it just like even something as small as that, along with having those guys come back, I just think the entire narrative shifts. And instead, you just got a lot of people wondering, what is the point? We're in a position where you can make the playoffs and you're still not buying. Does that instill any confidence that next season, if they're, let's say they're in the 3rd wild card or the 2nd wild card, that they'll go out and buy more to augment the team? Or is it just going to be, well, we're not in a division spot, we got to push it to the following year?
Yeah.
At some point you need to cash some chips in.
Yeah,
and 100%. Get something. And I just look at some of the players that were moved in some of the price, and I think they were very reasonable. And I'm not advocating like they should not have been on a Justin Verlander, Scherzer, that type of player.
No,
but I just don't think it would have cost much to get some of those lower tier guys. Even just go out and get like a Middleton type reliever, or I don't know. Just look at all the relievers who were dealt.
Scott
you could have got those guys, or even Jack Flaherty. Higher end. Even with Jack Flaherty, the Orioles got him for like their 17th ranked prospect. Cesar Prieto, who funnily enough was once a Red Sox, but he was one of those 300K signing guys who got voided.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
No, he wasn't.
Prieto.
Well, by the way, I should point out one of the names I missed is Shi Jung Liu, who probably belongs in that list of Rule 5 pitchers that I could see a team popping them. And with Bonucci, the other thing, and you mentioned York, is there's this logjam of infielders that's forming at AA. Like at this point, I feel like Bonusy should be in AA, but there's nowhere for him to play.
Oh, no. He wasn't, excuse me. He wasn't one of those 300K signings. He was traded. The
Yeah,
Red
I
Sox
told you.
traded him. Yeah.
But
But he was traded
Prieto?
yeah, he was on the Red Sox, wasn't he?
No.
Almost positive he was. Who am I thinking of?
They traded there was the two guys they traded for Cashner.
Oh, that's who I was thinking of. Who was that? What was his name?
Hold on. X prospects.
I'm almost positive one of them was a Prieto.
You are thinking of Elio Prado.
Prado. That is who I'm thinking of. But anyway, regardless,
and Noel Berth Romero was the other guy.
That's who it was. But the guy the Orioles gave up, he sounds pretty similar to Bonusy. And like, if you could have got Flaherty for Bonusy, that would have sent a pretty big message to the team and kept the guy away from a direct competitor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I understand not, and I completely agree with not paying the price for the top guys, but I think they could have done a little more to try and augment the depth. And then the flip side of it is if you're truly committed to building this long-term sustainable contender, I just don't get why you didn't trade Paxton and because like I understand that it sends a terrible message, but if that's what you truly believe is the best move for the team going forward, then you got to stick to your convictions and do that. You know what I mean? Like you were brought in to make those tough decisions. And if you think that's the right path for the team going forward, then even if it's a bad PR move, you should be making that move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't like just sitting down the middle and just being like, hey, we'll add a distressed asset at marginal cost and then do nothing else. I don't know. It's just so weird.
With Paxton, I get not moving him because you can give him the qualifying offer, right? So there's a middle ground with him of, okay, we're probably going to give him a QO.
And I'll just say, I know teams were very interested. Like there was a lot of people wanted James Paxton.
This was a seller's market.
They could have gotten a very good return for him.
Because
as you said, because of the QO.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's not too many guys in the space between Verlander, Scherzer, and like Lorenzen. There weren't too many of like guys in the Paxton level of like.
No, you would have gotten substantially more than any pitcher, say for Scherzer and Verlander, because those two guys had a second year or third year. So those guys had multiple years. Of the pure rental arms, he probably would have got the biggest return, unless like maybe Giolito. But I think you could argue that it would be on that level. And what did
Giolito was the only other guy on that tier.
And Giolito got you a top 50 prospect and another solid high minor starting pitching prospect. It was Edgar Quero and Kai Busch. So like with Paxton, you could have probably got like a top 100 type prospect for him. And is that better than the QO plus whatever he does the next couple of months? Maybe not. You can make that case.
Well,
but for Duvall, you already have too many outfielders.
Or Verlander. Verlander, Verdugo.
Exactly. Well, Verdugo's who I would have traded. But yeah, I want Jarren Duran and Tristan Casas playing basically every day. Right now, those guys, you're basically sitting one of your better hitters every day in order to get Verdugo or Duvall in the lineup. Yeah. And I just don't agree with that. I think that Duran, Turner went healthy, Casas and Yoshida need to be in the lineup every day. I don't like that they're all playing like 5 days a week right now. I think you're not putting your best team out there every day because of that. And it's to do that, it's because you're playing, Verdugo and Duvall. And are they going to make Duvall a platoon guy for the second half of the year? Is that what's going to happen now? Like,
yeah, I think that's basically what's going to happen, which is kind of wild. I mean, why didn't you move him to a team that would have played him every day just to get another lottery ticket?
I think you could have got more than a lottery ticket. I mean, Tommy Pham. Who did Tommy Pham get traded for? And I think he got traded for. I want to say it's Ryan Weathers. I might have made that up.
No, that's a different trade.
No. Tommy Pham went for this guy who's 17, who got $1.5 million last year, $1.25 million from Arizona, a shortstop prospect. Mm-hmm. But like you could have got more than Tommy Pham for Duvall, and I don't think it would have been changed anything because you still would have had Ruff Snyder as your main platoon guy, and Pablo Reyes also can play outfield. So I just think, like, I look at, and here's another one. What are they going to, when Story comes back, if you trade Duvall, he just slots in there. It's fine.
If you trade Duvall, what you do is I guess it doesn't seem like Story's that far away.
No.
So for a week or so,
you just call Dahlbeck or Hamilton up.
Hamilton, Abreu.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Call one of the guys up. string it for a week, and then, say, hey, thank you for the cup of
But
coffee. Then you
instead, now
slug
they're
a
going to
slot
end
in
up
Story.
DFAing Reyes, Chang, or Arroyo and getting nothing back
Mhm.
because you
Because there's
can't.
no more
There's
waiver
no waiver
trades.
trades.
Yep.
So like, what? That's like, I don't know.
I mean,
I just
granted, someone might get hurt, right? Someone could get hurt in the meantime. Like you just got Reyes back. Lord knows Arroyo can't stay healthy.
but
Maybe
that
something
doesn't
happens with
that doesn't
Story.
help with the Duval situation.
No,
That
what I'm
doesn't get
saying is
Duval.
like maybe you like at that point, because you said you're gonna have to DFA someone when Story comes back. And my
Oh
point
yeah,
is
yeah. But
maybe you don't because someone gets hurt, but you don't bank on that. Like I'm
no,
agreeing with
but
you.
and at the end of the day, it doesn't help. Doesn't make any more playing time for Adam Duval. So I don't know. I we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's
I mean,
curious. It was a curious like last year they half and halved it by both buying and selling. This year they half and halved it by doing nothing.
yeah.
So let's
And
talk about
and
the
and
trades. But
and
oh,
my
go
thing
ahead.
is just I want to see a direction. I want like I would like to see some conviction with this is the path we're on. And even just getting Lorenzen or a reliever along with Urias tells me that, hey, we think we have a chance this year. Once you get in the tournament, who knows what can happen? I mean, we saw the Padres made the World Series last year or made the NLCS last year from the third
NLCS.
wild card spot.
Hmm.
Like you never know what's going to happen.
Or did
Versus
they make the
now,
World Series?
I think they did make the World
Yeah,
Series,
they
right?
did. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, from the third wild card versus now, it's just, hey, we're running with the same team, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't love it. All right. The three trades that they've made since our last episode, I guess we'll go chronologically. The first one was Kike Hernandez to the Los Angeles Dodgers for Nick Robertson and Justin Hageman. Ian, just basically, I mean, to use a phrase that you use a lot, a nice piece of business to get two useful pieces for a guy you were probably going to DFA in Kike, who is on Los Angeles's bench right now.
yeah,
Robertson's on the 40. He's the bigger piece of the two. Both of them AAA relievers.
yeah.
What were your kind of thoughts on this? I thought it was a solid deal. I like Robertson on paper looks great, but then since he's come over, he's been brutal with Worcester.
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
No, it's a small
three
sample
outings
size.
or
I'm
whatever.
not actually worried. I'm just saying it figures, but he strikes me as a guy that could come up this year, honestly, and help for the rest of this year. 6'6", 265, big dude, 93 to 98.
Yeah, I like Robertson. He's it's interesting to me because he's almost like a better version of what they have been churning out at the back end of that 40 man with like the Garza types. He actually is one of those, throws hard, really good changeup that can miss bats and an okay slider versus those guys who are, the more sinker slider finesse types. But he's definitely interesting. He's, as you said, he's got some MLB experience this year. He's got a pretty big fastball. And yeah, you get him in the pitching dev and maybe you can unlock something there. Hagman has had better numbers this year, but his stuff is kind of more fringy. It's like low 90s fastball, slider, changeup, doesn't miss as many bats. But I'm fine with getting anything for Hernandez was going to be a win for me, and the fact that they got two close to big league ready arms who maybe you can unlock something with how when you get him in the pitching dev works for me. I thought that was a nice shrewd piece of business.
Mm-hmm. The next deal was that the Red Sox traded Salem relief pitcher Marquez Johnson, who was a draft pick last year out of, I believe it was Georgia Tech. Am I remember? Oh no, or Long Beach
No,
State.
he was Long Beach State.
Long Beach State, yeah. Long Beach State. I saw him. He was interesting. I mean, you could tell he's definitely like an analytics guy. High spin
No,
rate
yeah.
type
I mean, that's
dude.
why I said
He's
it on the last
interesting.
podcast.
Yeah, you
said
did.
I said he was going to be someone that might get traded
Yeah,
because
you did
he
nail that
has
one. That was great.
he has the traits teams look for.
So he got traded for Mauricio Llovera. Just another. He was a guy that had been DFA'd by San Francisco, I believe.
Yeah,
Another up and down type guy. Although, yeah, does he have options? I
I don't know.
don't think he has options, which is why he would have been DFA'd.
Yeah,
Just another kind of back of the bullpen type guy.
yeah. Well,
Middle
not
innings,
back end. You mean back of like the rotation?
middle
Yeah,
innings type guy.
yeah. It's just a depth arm, and Johnson. His numbers aren't very good. He's been better as of late. Mid 90s fastball, really high spin rate. He's got a ton of cut on it, which makes it hard to control. But it's a good strong arm. He's got, as you said, some interesting pitch characteristics. I completely get why the Giants want him. Sounds like a Brian Bannister special, if you ask me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's the type of piece that you end up trading. It's a lottery ticket type arm, if that makes sense. And in return, I don't know a lot about Livero. He obviously didn't have a very good debut when he came over,
Jovera.
but he strikes me as, given they
Jovera
lost,
per baseball
I don't
reference.
know.
Jovera.
Okay,
Sorry.
Joe Vera,
I'm learning.
but
I'm learning to say it as well.
it just struck it. What to me, it was they needed another 40-man arm, right-handed relief type, especially with who is it? Caleb Wart's now on the 60-day.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they were getting a little light with that group beyond I mean, you just have to look at over the last couple of days what they had to, or not last couple of days, last couple of
Yeah.
weeks, they had to bring up Jake Faria. Who's the other arm they brought up?
Jake Faria,
That
North
was
Godinho, both of whom got
Goodino.
released
That's what I,
in the past week.
right. So
Yeah.
they were running low on arms. So I'm fine with that trade.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's adding depth. I mean, if you look right now, they're getting a little deeper in AAA. They've got Brandon Walter on the 40 man, who's back in the rotation, and they've got Justin Garza and Nick Robertson on the 40 man in the AAA bullpen, and that's it. And that's with having Jovera up, and that's bringing poor Joe Jakes, who had to take 3 cross country flights in a span of like 4 days. Um, Bringing him back up with Joely Rodriguez hitting the IL yet again, which I think is the 3rd time this year, Ian, that Rodriguez is at the IL. So not great there, but yeah, it's more depth. And then today, of course, it was the acquisition of Luis Urias for Bradley Blaylock, high A starting pitcher, right-hander, a guy that was part of 2 different demographics that we thought they could deal from. That being guys who are Rule 5 eligible this year, as we talked about earlier, and guys who I just threw this out there because it's where they dealt from last time, low minors arms, because that's where they dipped into to go get Kyle Schwarber when they dealt Aldo Ramirez, who basically hasn't pitched since. Um, it's fine. It's a buy low attempt on Urias,
Oh,
who's been a useful piece the last 2 years and has been abysmal this year.
I think it's more than fine. I think it's a nice piece of business because one of the biggest concerns I've had is I don't think they have anyone to play second base, frankly, the rest of the season and next season. And Urias is someone the last 2 years he was worth like 2 F WAR, 3+ B WAR the last 2 years. His WRC plus is like 110 or 112 and 110 each of the last 2 years. Almost I think 20 something home runs one year, 16 the
He had
next.
23 home runs in 2011, 16 in 2022.
He runs
19.
like
Oh,
a
no, that's AAA. Sorry.
he runs like a 10+% walk rate, strikes out at a fine clip. I think he's a decent player. I mean, he's a 2 to 3 WAR player, depending on where you look. That's pretty good. And this season, it's just gone all wrong for him. He was at the WBC where he hit well, and then he got hurt. I think it was opening day. He's out for several months, came back, was abysmal, got demoted. I still think there's a talented player in there. It's just about, getting him back to his previous form. And if the Red Sox can do that, he's someone who could be an everyday second baseman for them for the next year plus until Marcelo Meyer's ready. So, and frankly, gives them more depth at shortstop too, because I think he's played shortstop and third also.
Yeah.
So I really like that move for them. But it's there's not a lot of risk with obviously giving up Blaylock. I like Blaylock, and he's someone who has had a really good season in his return from Tommy John. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, does a ton of strikes. His velo's ticked up. He's like 92, 95 now, tops out at 97. It's control over command, but he's shown some bat missing ability with his fastball. The splitter is a nice new weapon, 86 to 88, flashes like above average. We'll see if its consistency maintains as he gets in the high minors. 2 breaking balls are kind of inconsistent. Some outings they'll be average, some they'll be more below average, but he's a solid arm. If he finds consistency with his secondaries, maybe he could be a back end starter or a multi-inning reliever. If not, maybe he's just a single inning guy. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets to the big leagues. But I'll trade someone like that who I think is. You have a few other guys who fit that profile in the system, especially considering what we were talking about earlier. I don't think he was going to make the Rule 5 protection list.
No.
So, or if he was, you basically have to look at it that trading him, gets you another guy on the list. Granted, the Urias takes up a spot too. But yeah, no, I think that's a good trade and a nice piece of business by Chaim Bloom and Co.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, like I said, it's the demos you wanted to deal from. And that's why I'm surprised they just didn't deal more from them just to thin out. I mean, you've got guys playing, out of position or unable to play short or what have you. Um, Yeah, it's an interesting deal. It's an interesting deal. I'm fine with it. I just wish they had done more. Anything on the trades, Ian, before we kind of wrap up all the other kind of smaller transactions that they did over the past week or so since our last episode? All right. Well, number of things have happened. First of all, releases, happy trails to Jake Faria, Daniel Palka, Joe Jones, and North Gudino. Gudino was the swingman in AAA. Got called up to the majors. Has never made his debut. I didn't realize he was up, didn't pitch in what would have been his debut. He was released. Jones was a reliever who started the year in in high A, got promoted to double A. Kind of struggling in double A. Daniel Palka, former major leaguer who was again a triple A first baseman / right fielder, released, and Faria, who'd been up a couple times, swingman type as well.
Alfaro also, right? That happened today.
And
He got
Alfaro got
DFA'd.
designated for assignment today. I mean, technically he's not gone yet, technically, but he's gone.
I would assume he'll reject the assignment like he did the first time.
Well, no, the first time he was on a minor league deal and had an opt-out.
Oh, right. Yes.
So
I think he might have rejected it with the Rockies when they.
I think that's true. I think that's true. I mean, they signed him to a major league deal. I don't think he's got any intention of going back to AAA, and I don't think the Red Sox even want him in AAA. To be frank, by the way, Framber has not allowed a hit through 8.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so those are happy trails to those guys. Draft peoples. The only draftees who have debuted so far are, I guess, the one guy we didn't talk about last episode, minor league undrafted free agent infielder Drew Erhard, who was a grad student at University of Tampa in his 6th year of eligibility. He is already 24, signed as an undrafted free agent. Don't know the bonus, but I'm going to guess it's not much. It's a depth move. He reported and was the first one to debut yesterday. And then today, Stanley Tucker, who I believe was the 19th round pick of the Red Sox, debuted starting in center field for the Florida Complex League team. So we're starting to see those guys triple in. And I bring up the draftees actually because the releases tied directly into that, because the domestic reserve list, which we have an email question about, caps your stateside minor leaguers at 180. Draftees don't count until they are assigned to a team and play. So if the Red Sox want to assign draftees to a team, they need to make sure that they're not over 180. Right now, they're at 172, counting some draftees who've been assigned to the Florida Complex League and not played yet, as well as the 2 we just mentioned. So there's some shenanigans that need to happen that, to make sure you can get guys on there. So I think that's where you're starting to see some of these guys. I think we mentioned Marcus Wilson last episode was released as well, but if not, he was recently released as well. So these guys get released right around now because you need to make room for the draftees under the domestic reserve list. Other transactions, Ian, speaking of draftees, outfielder Caden Rose was moved to the 60-day IL. And then promotions, everyone's favorite. So basically all pretty small, honestly, moving from the Florida Complex League to Low A Salem, our starting pitcher, Elvis Soto. And I think that's actually it for that one. I think Royman Blanco Royman Blanco is also new. Relief pitcher Royman Blanco. Moving from the DSL to the Florida Complex League are relief pitchers Darlin De La Cruz and Cesar Ruiz. Moving from Salem to Greenville is relief pitcher Rita Senna. And moving from Greenville to Portland, the only ranked guy in this group, and kind of the interesting one, currently at 41 on our rankings, is Alex Hoppe. Hoppe dials it up to about 98, 99. Interesting guy. I know you tweeted about him, Ian. Really, that's the one that stands out. Not the world's most exciting set of promotions, but I think that's what we're going to get at this point, honestly. It's that, and it's when draftees maybe move up if you want to get Kyle Teal a look in Salem, although Teal hasn't debuted yet in the Complex League either. So that's the group of promotions for this month or this week. Last couple of promotions, the Red Sox signed a couple more minor league free agents. And Eddie Alvarez, who, if the name sounds familiar, he's an infielder who is one of 6 athletes in history to have earned medals in both the Winter and Summer Olympic Games in different disciplines. So completely different. In his case, he won a medal as a speed skater in the Winter Olympics and as a member of the U.S. men's baseball team in the Summer Olympics. So that's kind of interesting. Of course, in his first game with the Worcester Red Sox, got injured running the bases and is on the IL, unfortunately. So tough luck for him. The other guy who's back is right-hander Franklin Herman is back with the team. The Red Sox signed him. He had a fairly brutal year so far, honestly. Just command and control issues that he did not have in the Red Sox system after being traded to the Red Sox by the Yankees. Basically just came back to the team that he had a lot of success with. And I guess the plan is he went on immediately on the IL and he's going to go down to Fort Myers and they're just going to try and figure out what's wrong and try and fix him essentially. So interesting to have Herman back. Best of luck to him. Ian, anything on any of those moves? That's kind of a lot to throw at you at once, but also not a lot.
No, I mean, Hoppy, as you said, was the one that most interesting to me. He's someone scouts have seen that team think could be a potential MLB reliever at some point. Stuff's really good. Just got consistency from out and outing, but lately he's not walking guys. I think he's like 18 strikeouts, 2 walks in his last 13 innings, something along those lines. So he's pretty interesting. He's got one of the highest average fastball velos in the system too. So he throws hard, he throws strikes, he gets a ton of grounders. That's a recipe for things that analytically inclined teams really like. So he's pretty interesting to me, and I'm interested to see how he adjusts to Double A, especially now that he's at a level you can kind of compare him with the Guerrero, Troy types to see how they kind of stack up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, I guess without further ado, then we'll go on to emails. And our first one is from Austin, who says, "Hey, I was looking at the top 20 players in the system right now, and I noticed that 7 of them have ETAs for 2024. Obviously, not all of them will turn out to be pros or be on the 40-man next year, but how many guys do you realistically think will be at the Major League roster at some point next year? How do you think that will impact roster construction for the team heading into next year?" I mean, look, ETAs are a rough estimate for that player in a vacuum. They are not. This is when the Boston Red Sox are going to have room for this player. It's tough to tell. It's based on need. It's based on injuries. It's based on a lot of things we really can't forecast. So I don't know, really have much more to add to it than that, Ian. I don't know if you do, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like those things just work themselves out. Whether it be via trade, some guys take longer to develop than others, things like that.
Right. But the question of like how many guys are going to be on the roster next year, who knows? It's depends on what they need.
Yeah.
Our next email is from Brian, who says, Nesson and other outlets have discussed how Tristan Casas yells where he believes the pitch is going to land before swinging. 1, do you remember him doing this in the minors, or is this a new thing? And 2, as guys who watch a lot of minor league baseball, do you remember any other Red Sox with strange or unique tendencies or rituals? Thank you for your hard work, Brian. I don't remember him doing it in the minors, Ian. It doesn't mean he didn't do it.
When the times I saw him, I don't remember him doing it. And I don't remember any other hitters doing it either. It's just
I think it's strange tendencies or rituals, not the specific thing. And nothing comes to mind. I don't know if you've got.
I mean, there's a lot of things with like people getting in the way they get set, or the way they like walk onto the mound or walk to the plate, things like that, or a lot of guys will like write something in the dirt, things like that. But
I mean, the one that's coming to mind is Ronnie Raudes.
Oh, the little crouch
with his his kind of. It wasn't even his mechanics. It was a thing he did before every pitch where he just kind of wiggled. It was weird.
Well, no, he also did the thing where he crouched over completely. It was like almost kneeling before every pitch. But yeah, no, it's I don't have any specific ones like that.
Our next email is from Drew, who says, Chris and I am. He thinks that you have a pet food company. Ian.
Well, I'm not responding to this email then, so enjoy.
Or maybe he says Chris and I am. Maybe he's saying that he is or something. I don't know. Anyway, just kidding, Drew. Maybe not so much a question for y'all to answer on independent podcast and more an interview question the next time you get a guy from the Oregon. The S2 cognition test is seemingly trickling into the baseball development world for football, where it's been talked about a lot with quarterback prospects. Do you know if the Red Sox use it at all? I'm still skeptical of its effectiveness, but still would be interested to know if they value it. Thanks. I don't know what specific cognition tests they use. I back when Mookie Betts was coming up as a prospect, I'm sure it was Alex Spear who probably wrote about this. They were using a cognition test for amateurs before drafting them. I don't know I don't recall which test it was or if they use it now or what have you, but cognition tests are certainly something that they are mindful of and use, but I don't know which specific ones they use, and honestly don't know how forthcoming the team would even be about that. Our next question is unsigned, and it says, "Hey, Ian and Chris."
Sorry, just to jump in because you're moving on to the next question.
Oh, sorry.
If I was to answer the previous question, which I'm not, I'm just
no. Well, that's why I skipped. I knew you weren't going to answer.
I wasn't asked to. I would say that Justin Reamer had one of the highest S2 cognition tests of any draftees, which was something Kylie McDaniel talked about heading into this
Interesting.
year's draft. But I
Interesting.
wasn't asked the question, so I'm just saying that because it's a fun fact. So
If your name was
also,
I am, that's how your response would sound.
yeah, but also Framber Valdez just threw a no hitter, so I'm glad I didn't have to answer that
did he?
question so I could watch the end.
Fair enough. All right. Sorry about that, Ian. Unsigned question. What do you make of Marcelo Meyer's struggles at the plate in Portland? Something to worry about, or just the usual adjustment period for a prospect? And Ian, I know we talked about this on a previous episode, but in case people missed previous episodes or are just joining us now and don't know, I believe our answer is still don't worry about it.
He's 20 years old in Double A. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I mean, this BABIP is like, what is it, 200 or something? I'm looking up it right now. It's he's hitting 200, and his BABIP is why is it
Well,
not
while you look
showing?
for it, I kind of looked the other day, and if you look at all of his rates, his walk rate, his K rate, his in zone contact rate, his exit velocities, his chase rates, all of them are more or less the same. They're close. They're within some wiggle room.
His BABIP is 230.
His
It's not going to
BABIP
stay like
dropped
that.
from like 350 to 230, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
So
think that's sustainable. I think
that's
he'll
the
be fine.
only thing that changed by any significant amount. It's
But
ball
I
and
do
play
think
luck.
I do think though that what it's showing is that there is an adjustment period to Double A, and for young guys, it can be a little steeper than maybe if guys are a little older. So I'm not too worried about it. But I think it just shows that guys like him, you just got to be patient. You're not going to rush someone like Meyer, Roman Anthony, types like that. You got to let them develop and take their lumps, and then it's on them to make those adjustments at the level and get back to performing like we know they can.
Relatedly, Tim asks, I often hear you say, don't scout the stat line. What are the metrics telling us about Meyer in Portland? So, I mean, again, that's what we're saying. Everything
Yeah,
else
they're
is
fine.
the same as it was in Greenville, with the exception of his ball and play luck. Next question is from Bill Stanton, who says, hey guys, over the last couple of years, you have expressed your doubts about Jarren Duran's ability to adequately man center field and his ability to adjust and hit MLB pitching. While I remain confident that his hitting would at least improve, I, like you, after seeing him in seeing him in the minors several times and at the MLB level last year, had serious doubts he could play center field. How do you assess his play to this point, and how has he gone from a near disaster to the player we are seeing today?
I'm working very hard.
Yeah.
I think he's done a great job, and it's why you don't give up on athletes. It's why when we talked about him, I think we talked about at the end of last year, some scouts who gave me some feedback that, hey, Durant looks different in AAA at the end of the season. Don't write him off for next season. And I think he's shown that. And I mean, when you look at him, he's still there's still some funny his roots might not be the best, but he's getting much better jumps this year. He's in 99th percentile in outfielder jumps this year. And just because of how fast he is, he's still able to get to, balls, even if he might not take necessarily the most consistent route. And I just think that, it just shows with guys with tools like him, sometimes it can take a little time to click. And he's really found his stride this year and made that level or that leap into someone who you can kind of look at as a everyday player for the franchise for years to come.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Our next question is from Vincent, and this is kind of a long one, and I think it's something that's more up my alley. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start answering and jump in if you have something that you want to add. He's basically asking, I'm not going to read the whole email because it's very long. So again, a reminder to folks, if your email is really long, shorter is better. And he's basically asking to help understand which players count towards the 180 player domestic reserve list and which don't. Put simply, the 180 player domestic reserve list is something that came in with the new CBA. And what it is it limits teams to 180 domestic minor leaguers who are either active or on a short-term injured list. So players that count is any player that's active on the 4 full season affiliates or the Florida Complex League when that's going / extended spring training when it's not. It's basically everyone in the U.S. It counts players who are on the injured list, which in the minors is a 7-day injured list. It counts players that are on the development list, which is essentially, if you've been around long enough to know what the Phantom IL was, which was basically, or the Phantom DL, because I guess it was the disabled list at the time. The Phantom DL was basically your third catcher or anyone you wanted to keep, but didn't have room to keep active, would basically get a calf strain. or something to that effect and go on the IL. And when you needed them again, they would be healed and they would get activated from the IL. In the CBA, they smartly did away with that artifice and created a thing called the development list, which is literally just the guy being taken off of the active roster because you don't have room for him, but he's at that level. So, for example, right now, a great example of this is Oscar Rangel, the third catcher, I guess fourth catcher in AAA. He's been on the dev list most of the year. That's because he is there to basically be a spare catcher if they need a catcher at that level. Usually there's like a third catcher at each level that kind of goes on and off of it. Matt Donlin has been that guy in Portland this year. Jonathan Diaz has been that guy in Greenville this year. They're both active right now. Juan Montero and Salem, same thing. Again, he's active right now because they need to be active based on what those teams' needs are. So that's the development list. Long-term injured list, which this is something we actually learned this week. There's now two different long-term injured lists. There's the 60-day injured list, which is exactly what it sounds like. Guy has to be out for at least 60 days. He can't work out or rehab until 45 days had passed, which I didn't know. So you can't, after 30 days, put a guy on a rehab assignment if he's on the 60-day IL. He's got to wait till day 45 before he can go on a rehab assignment. That player does not count towards the domestic reserve list. The other reserve list is the full season, injured list is the full season injured list. That is for a player who is going to be out, obviously, for the rest of the season. The difference is essentially that players on the full season injured list, you can send them home, essentially. Guys that are on the 60-day are either with the team that they're assigned to or they're in Fort Myers. A guy on the full season list, let's say a guy gets Tommy John, for example. There's no reason for a guy a month out from Tommy John needs to be at the complex. Let him go home, right? I mean, he can't do anything. You know, he can work out. He can do the treadmill at home just as well as he can do it in camp. You can let the guy go home. You can also let guys get like off-site physical training or physical therapy, not training, physical therapy, that kind of thing for those injuries. So that's what that is. Looking at the rest of it, I mean, he asks about the restricted list. The restricted list is basically guys that are not assigned to teams for some kind of off-field reason, be it good or bad or in between or what have you. Again, they're just guys that are off for non-injury reasons, not participating. And then he mentions unassigned players from the recent draft. You don't count towards the domestic reserve list after you are drafted until you are placed on a team. So, for example, some of the pitchers the Red Sox drafted, if the Red Sox aren't going to have them pitch this year in games, won't get assigned to an affiliate. They'll just stay unassigned. They won't count towards the 180. And then during the offseason, I think it goes up from 180 to 190. So you just wait until the offseason, they count towards the 190. You know, all your minor league free agents become free agents and you're well under and you're fine. So that is how the 180-man domestic reserve list is calculated. Those are, I think I got everything. I think I hit everything. So yeah, thanks for the question. Like I said, sometimes those procedural or type questions, things that I or me and Ian take for granted. If folks don't get them when you're listening, please ask them. So our next question is from Sean, who says, here is my thought process and then my question. One, it is difficult to win a World Series without several above average starting pitchers. Okay, Ian. Two, the only Red Sox pitchers on the 40-man roster for 2024 that project as above average are Brian Bayo and Chris Sale. Three, above average free agent starting pitchers are very expensive and prone to injury or, given their ages, decline. Four, your website grades Drohan, Perales, and Gonzalez as 5.5s, likely not above average. And five, the Red Sox continue to take position players with their higher draft picks. So his question is, what will the Red Sox do and what should they do to change things so that they can acquire/develop above average starting pitchers and therefore not have to rely on free agency? Producing a Bayo, Buchholz, or Lester once every 10 years doesn't seem like a viable strategy in this day and age. Ian, any initial thoughts on that question? I know there's some things there that we have talked about, but there's a lot of different things to to focus on in that question.
Well, I didn't think the first thing is it's not easy to develop an above average starting pitcher.
Correct. So he defines it as a 3 to 5 WAR per year player. So I'm going to pull up how many pitchers.
Yeah, I'm going to guess
year.
that number is of just starters is what, under 40 probably?
Yeah, that's my guess. Yep.
So you're looking at 1 to 2 per team.
Yeah.
Like, the Red Sox, he just said had 2, and I would argue if they keep Paxton, they have potentially 3. So
I mean,
I don't.
heck, Pavetta keeps pitching like this. Maybe he's 4. I'm kidding, but like I'm also not.
But
But
yeah,
anyway.
no, I mean they do need to start develop. Ideally, you would develop more guys like Bayo, but if it was easy, every team would do it. There's a
Mhm.
reason that every team is starving for pitching at this day and age, and that developing those homegrown guys is so difficult. Teams like Cleveland, the Dodgers. Okay,
You actually overestimated the number of starting pitchers last year with 3 WAR is 26.
so yeah, that's less than 1 per team. So
Yeah.
I think that we need to kind of recalibrate our expectations when it comes to starting pitchers in general and developing starting pitching prospects. Because if you develop someone who's like a 1.5 WAR pitcher, that's a massive win. If you develop a guy's a half a WAR pitcher, that's a win. So I just think that it's all well and good to like dream about having, 5 ace types or front end rotation types in your rotation. That's just not realistic at all. I mean, look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers do Noah Syndergaard out there for half the season. He's been atrocious.
Mhm.
Even the best teams make mistakes or are having trouble filling their rotations. So the fact that the Red Sox have potentially Bayo, Sale, and Paxton, I think is already a pretty good start for them.
Let me correct myself. You were actually spot on. I was only using qualified, like ERA title
Oh
qualified
yeah,
pitchers.
yeah,
The number is actually literally 40.
yeah. That sounds about right. So it's like
It's
one
right
and
on the
yeah,
nose. And then
yeah.
Edwin
I mean,
Diaz
I'm
was
smart, so
the
yeah.
highest reliever at 3.
But yeah, no, that makes sense. That was
Yep.
about what I was expecting
Yep.
because every team you say not every team has an ace, but let's say at a given time there's 15 aces and then maybe 25 number
Well, how do you
twos.
want to define an ace? Like
An
in
eight,
war, 5 and
an eight,
above?
yeah, probably.
Because 5 and above, there were literally 7. It's Nola, last year, it's Nola, Rodon,
But I,
Verlander, Alcantara, Gaussman, Otani, Fried.
but
That's
I,
it.
oh geez, Duval just got drilled on the hand. But who's some of the guys that like just below 5? Because I'm sure some of them you'd
Yeah,
consider
I mean
aces.
it's Strider at
Stride,
4.9,
he's an
Bieber at
ace.
4.9,
Nah, not
Burns
an
at
ace anymore. Burns
4.6,
is an ace. Yeah, so
Framber
I
at
would say
4.4,
he's an
Scherzer
ace.
at 4.4 because he was hurt.
So it's
Wheeler
probably
4.1, he
he's an
missed time.
ace.
Yeah.
It's probably 10 to 15 like aces, and then
Mhm.
you have another 20 to 25 solid number 2 types. After that, yeah, you're it's hard to find those top of the echelon and develop them.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as big
Yep.
a problem as the emailers making it out to be. I think in a
Mhm.
perfect world you would be developing those guys every year, but that's just not realistic. And the problem is, as we've talked about I think pretty extensively, when you're developing pitching, it can take a long time and a lot can go wrong. And it's
Mhm.
just hard to use those high draft pick assets or big international bonuses, especially the big international bonuses, because the track record of the big money international pitchers is horrific. Just kind of similar to the high school first round pitcher types. They've chosen not to go that route. And I think honestly, it's been backed up by what's been happening with their rotations. Like look at the top prospects we have with between Bayo, Perales, Wickelman, Brian Mata, even Shane Drohan. None of those guys were high draft picks or big bonus guys. I mean, I guess
No.
Drohan got over slot, but it's a volume game with pitching. And I think that's the biggest thing is you got to bring as many guys as you can into the system and then just figure out who clicks because you never know where those guys are going to come from. And I think they've been doing a much better job with that as of late, targeting specific, archetypes of pitchers, whether it be, north south, guys with good north south movement, guys with tunneling pitches, guys who, high spin rates, things like that. They've been doing a good job of bringing those guys in and kind of and making them better and elevating them within the development program. And I think they just need to continue doing that. And I would like to see them go out and spend though on a big free agent pitcher. That's something I think has to be the top of the wish list this offseason because
Yeah.
I think you qualify Paxton and basically
Mhm.
say if some team wants to give him a multi-year deal, great, we'll take the pick. If not, I would love him back on a 1-year deal. And even regardless of what happens with him, I think they have to go out and spend big on whether it be who did Costas another? Nope. Whether it be someone like a Nola type or I don't love Blake Snell, but Nola would probably be Nola Wheeler. I think he's a free agent. Or the guy who's coming over from Japan, whose name is escaping me right now.
Oh,
Who they've
is
been
he?
linked to. What?
Is he coming over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember
It's not
Yamamoto.
Sasaki, it's
It's
the
not
other guy.
Yamamoto, but it's something with a Y.
Yeah.
Um, who they've obviously had been scouting extensively. Those are the type of guys I think that they need to bring into. But yeah, I think the rotation is not as bad shape as people are making it out to be.
And also just a point on the grades too. I mean, the three guys he mentioned, Drohan, Perales, Wickelman, Gonzalez. Yes, we have them as future value 4.5s. But if you look at their range, we've given them all 6 ceilings. And frankly, Perales might eventually push to a 7 ceiling.
Yeah, and Drohan might not have is not at a 6 ceiling anymore.
Yeah, and Drohan we probably have to tweak, but that doesn't mean like they are not going to be above average. It's just that with all of these factors, Tin Stap, there is no such thing as a pitching prospect.
I mean, this year I think that's more true than ever. Look at it. Of the top pitching prospects going into the year, Andrew Painter done for the season. TJ, Daniel Espino, what do you have? Flex shoulder surgery or something?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna bring it up. Let's look at Baseball America's prospect list. Oh, I can't see it at the beginning of the year, so I think the only one I can see is Keith Law's top 100.
Oh no, actually you can now since they updated their website.
Because you used to not be able to.
Best update ever.
It.
My God, thank you, BA.
Rankings.
Yeah, if you go to rankings, then there's one for beginning of the year or preseason top 100 or
preseason top 100. Here it is.
Yeah.
So let's go down. I'm going to go down. Actually, this will be an interesting exercise because I haven't done this yet. So the top rated pitching prospect was Painter. He's out for the year, and I don't think he pitched at all this year. Actually,
no, he was rehabbing.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Because remember, because there was the article about how oh God, the other thing we have to. I guess there's nothing to talk about yet. But the Phillies weren't letting him or Song talk to the media while they were on their rehab assignment.
Yeah. So then Grayson Rodriguez was really bad, and now his come up has been really good for his last 2 starts. He's going to be a stud.
Yuri Perez
is a stud. Kodai, I'm not counting Senga. Gavin Williams has been inconsistent. Bobby Miller shows good stuff. Inconsistent. Brandon Pfaadt's been bad. Hunter Brown has been good. Ricky Tiedeman's been hurt most of the year.
Pfaadt's been better lately for whatever it's worth.
Has he? Shane Bass has been hurt the entire season. I think he had Tommy John. Kyle Harrison has been good this year. Mick Abel's been good. Espino's been out the entire season. Taj Bradley has been okay. He's inconsistent. Tink Hence missed most of the season and has coming back and has been pretty good. Like half the guys there have barely pitched this season, and that's just in the top 50. So yeah, I just pitching prospects are so risky.
Ryan Pepiot is in 55 and he hasn't pitched all year.
He's injured. It's just Cade Cavalli's missed is going to miss the entire season.
I don't know where DL Hall is, but he's at 75.
Dylan
he's been out for a lot of the year.
Just got back after rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. Just pitching prospects are so risky, and that's why, I don't have any issue with not spending high resources on it, because I think it's much easier to me, and I don't know if there's any studies backing this up, but I think it's a lot easier to get a impact, like let's say a 3+ WAR pitcher from a low bonus amount or lower draft pick than it is for position players. I just feel like when you look at the top position players in the game, for the most part, they're almost all big money, international guys or high draft picks, not necessarily high draft picks, but high bonus amounts. Whereas when you look at the pitchers, it just seems like to be more all over the board.
100%. And then our last email is about the Rule 5 draft. Again, not going to read all of it, but it's just basically asking about eligibility for the Rule 5 draft. So again, eligibility for the Rule 5 draft is based on how many years have passed since you signed your first your first professional contract. It's 4 if you were over 19 or older when you signed. It's 5 if you were 18 or younger when you signed. Once you're eligible for the Rule 5 draft, you stay eligible for the Rule 5 draft. We have a page at Sox Prospects. It's soxprospects.com/Rule5, RULE number, and then the number 5. But there's a link to it on the right-hand side of the homepage. It tells you everyone's Rule 5 eligibility. So you can find it on there. And then it asks about the minor league Rule 5 draft. You are eligible for the minor league Rule 5 draft if you are not on the Major League 40-man roster or the AAA reserve list, which is 38 players, I believe. Very few.
It is 38. And to be clear, it's the guys who are you still have to be Rule 5 eligible. It has nothing. It doesn't bring in any more additional players. It's from the same pool of players.
What do you mean to be on the minor league, the AAA reserve list?
Yeah, you didn't make it clear. It's you're still like, this is the reason no one that noteworthy is ever unprotected is because it's
Yes.
not like you have to protect every single player in the org. It's still just the players who are Rule 5
Well, that's
eligible.
what I'm saying. Right. Yeah. So it's that 4 or 5 year eligibility based on how old you were when you signed. So again, like basically what you have is it's like if you were in AAA, you're on the AAA reserve list. But keep in mind that guys who are on the 40-man roster who are in AAA don't need to be on the AAA reserve list. So right now, looking at the Red Sox AAA roster, right? You've got the 26 guys on the major league roster plus some guys on the IL. But on the AAA roster right now, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, including guys on the IL and Mata and Valdez. 9 guys in AAA out of the 28-man roster who are on the major league reserve list, the 40-man roster. So you've only got to protect like 19 and change AAA guys. And that's not counting the fact that most of these guys are minor league free agents who are going to walk at the end of the year. You know, they're going to probably just Narciso Crook is going to walk. Bradley Zimmer is going to walk. They're not going to resign these guys. So you've got plenty of room to protect guys on that AAA reserve list who are not in AAA yet, but are good. So, for example, anyone who is a borderline Rule 5 candidate is on the AAA reserve list. Trust me. Guys that get picked from in the minor league Rule 5 draft do not tend to be any great shakes. I mean, the Red Sox have done a really good job in recent years of mining the minor league Rule 5 draft pretty well. Joe Jakes was a minor league Rule 5 pick. Caleb Ort was a minor league Rule 5 pick. And before you say, oh, you know, those guys aren't that good, considering they literally got those guys for free and got major league innings out of them, is fairly impressive. Guys that the Red Sox have lost in the minor league Rule 5 draft, it's like Cam Cannon, you know, guy like Cannon was a backup in AA last year. So, you know, these are not types of guys you tend to miss that you lose in the minor league Rule 5 draft. So, but yeah, that's Rule 5. Again, SoxProspects.com/Rule 5 has the full list of guys who are eligible and what years they're eligible. I note it does it because this always confuses me and sometimes future minor league free agents are not on that page because they have to re-sign before they would be Rule 5 eligible. So, all right.
Speaking of Rule 5,
Oh God,
I think we have to talk about Noah's song. We've left it to the end deliberately in order to ensure everyone listens to the very end of the podcast because we know this is exactly what you want to hear about.
Well, has anything? I'm trying to think. Last time last time we knew we were going to get the decision.
Yeah, we got the decision now.
The Phillies designated Noah Song for assignment.
Well, and he can't be traded now, right? Because it's past the deadline.
He can get traded. Oh, I guess no. Now he can't get traded. You're right.
So if the only way they're going to lose him is a waiver claim.
Well, now they have to put him on waivers. So they'll just put him on waivers now. 48 hours from now, we'll have a decision on Rule Song.
I don't know if he gets
on
claimed.
Noah Song.
I'm not sure. I think he probably. I would guess a team like the Royals or the Athletics will take a punt on him. But
I'm less certain.
I'm not
than I
sure.
Was too.
Yeah, because his stuff in that last outing was not good. And
it's just like, to what end? Like,
what is? Well, that's the point. Is like for those teams, is it worth tying up a 40-man spot, especially because now
keeping him on the 40-man all off season?
Exactly. That's the more concern. That's the bigger thing for teams like that. With the Phillies, it didn't really matter because they didn't have to take up a 40-man spot until now, and you see what happens when they had to. They made
because they put him on the military list all off season, and then when his waiver came in. The rule is that like you get 15 days from when he reports.
Yeah, and then he went straight to the 60 days.
And then he went straight to he went straight to the 15, but then when they needed his 40-man spot, they put him on the 60.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll know next time we record. If I had to guess, I would say it's 50-50 he comes back or not.
I think that's right.
If he comes back, he'll just be able to I would assume they'll option him to what?
Well, no, they're not going to have to option him because he's not going to be on the 40-man.
I assume he would go to what, high A probably.
My guess is the first thing they do is bring him in to. He'll go
to extend it or not extend it. He'll go to Fort Myers.
He'll go to Fort Myers, not on the FCL roster. They'll probably like put him on the dev list in like Greenville or something,
and
send him to Fort Myers. Yeah, work with him there, and then I don't know that it'll be long, especially given how late in the year it is.
But
my guess is Greenville.
But I could also see a world where they're just like, we don't want you to pitch anymore this year. We're just going to work on strengthening your shoulder and building you up for the offseason.
Yeah, doing all the stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't
because honestly, I'm not sure.
Years.
if he makes back, what good it would do for them to pitch him this year, because all it is doing, if you fix something, it's exposing him to other teams to look at him for Rule 5 for this offseason coming, if that makes sense.
That's true. I mean,
Whereas
but here's
if you just shut him down for the year and have him strengthen his shoulder and go through throwing programs behind the scenes, scouts aren't going to get a look at him. It's basically like hiding him. And I honestly would prefer that, I would say.
But here's my, see, I don't think that's going to matter, because if you get him back, it means that he cleared waivers. And
Right.
it means that every team has passed on the opportunity to keep him on the major league roster for the 2 months of this season that are remaining,
Oh, yeah.
the off season, and 1 month of next year.
Yeah.
When selecting him in this off season's Rule 5 draft means they need to keep him on the 26-man roster all of next year.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So I don't know that that's as much of a concern.
Fair. But I don't know. I mean, we've seen it in the past where teams have not necessarily hid, but like tried to keep guys off of the radar who, so I wouldn't rule it out. I think
it could happen.
You're probably right. They'll probably just do whatever is best for him and his long-term future, whether that be strengthening and then just, maybe throwing in some side sessions, or strengthening enough and then maybe getting to Greenville in the next couple of weeks or a month. But yeah, I think it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him, but we'll know pretty soon what is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm trying to think, when they got AJ Politi back from Baltimore this year, it's a little different.
It's different though, because
it's a lot different. But he was in their camp. They got him back and he basically went immediately to Worcester. But that said, he'd been here the last 3 years. So that's a little different. Or 2, I guess, because 2020 was the lost year. But yeah, I think it's, look, this is more ado than it's worth, given what Noah Song is now. But we'll see. We'll know next episode what happened, and we can finally put this behind us.
Yeah, because I mean,
getting a resolution.
He's what, maybe a reliever at best. It's unclear if that
you can't start him at this point. He's what, 26?
25, 26.
25, 26. Like you can't start him at this point.
Yeah, it's unclear if the stuff that he showed pre-service will ever come back. When he was like 97 to 99 with 2 above average secondaries. It's just you never know.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the Noah Song update. Okay.
Noah Song
potentially the second to last Noah Song update.
Penultimate Noah Song update.
Potentially. I mean, because if he gets claimed by like that A's or Royals or someone, then we're gonna have to go through this whole process throughout all of this season, the off season, and next year. But part of next year. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up. Actually, I was gonna look really quick. I did get some Twitter questions. Why? No. Okay. Let's see. We did get a question, Ian. I don't know if you answered that. An answer to this. What Red Sox prospect would be comparable, if any, to what the Rays gave up for Aaron Savali? Who they gave up for Savali? Do you remember?
Kyle Manzardo. The Red Sox don't really have a comparable prospect.
No, I mean, it would be like a Rafaela level guy.
No, better than that.
Better than Rafaela. I mean, but I'm saying like that's if the other team really liked Rafaela.
Yeah, they don't.
So they don't really have anyone in that range.
A major league ready or close to major league ready, top 75-ish type hitter. Like Nick York would be that guy if he was performing better this year. But yeah, they don't really have anyone who fits that mold.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they probably could have got Savali, but it would have hurt more than they probably wanted it to. And I'm talking to some scouts on Savali, even though his numbers are really good, the expecteds are way below it, and they still aren't convinced he's more than like a number 4 or number 5 starter. So the Rays they paid a pretty steep price if he regresses to what he's expected to regress to.
Oh, here's another question we got. On the last podcast, you talked about needing a left-handed second base bat. What about Nick Sogard?
I really like Nick Sogard. I think he's got a chance to play in the big leagues at some point, and at worst is a really solid organizational player. But he's not going to give you the type of impact you're looking for at the second base position with his bat. It's still pretty light. So I think that they're still looking for that long-term option. But I mean, if Luis Urias hits like he has in the past, you're not going to need a platoon bat there. He's someone who could be an everyday guy. So
to be fair,
that's their goal to address that.
To be fair, this to the tweeter, this was before they got Urias. So
I would have preferred if you referred to him as the twit.
Just
throwing that out there. But
are you being clever? We got to wrap it up on that. All right. Well, thank you all again. It's podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what you all want to hear about. Again, that's far superior than trying to tweet me or DM me a question. send an email in. It's rare that I remember. The only reason I remember those today is I was on Twitter all damn day. So hit us up. You could follow us on socials. You can follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is. Ian is at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. You can follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. And you can follow the website.
We're also on Blue Sky now. Oh, were you going to get there? Sorry.
Well, I don't know how many. I mean, are you just going to keep at Ian Cundall everywhere?
Yeah, but I'm not that on one of them, and that's why I've never mentioned that one.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The website's always going to be at Sox Prospects. So,
Yeah.
put it that way. And if someone tries to take it, we're going to sue the hell out of them. No, I'm just kidding. Or I'm not.
I mean, we have it on everything, though. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we claimed it. So,
Yeah, because we're on. Yeah, because we're on now. What are we on? You want to say it? Sorry, I didn't mean
Blue
to-
Sky, we're on Threads at
Yeah.
Sox Prospects. We're not doing anything on any of them yet. So it's like, follow us in case we move over there. But X/Twitter, like, people keep thinking it's going to blow up, but like, it's still fine.
It's always going to be Twitter to me. I'm never going to call it X, but whatever.
I'm with you. Let's do it. Cool. All right. We always want to, as always, want to thank our supporters on patreon.com/Sox Prospects, as well as our $5 level Patreon supporters who get a rotating shout out. This month's shout outs go to, or this episode's shout outs go to Jeff Richardson, Michael Cullen, John McGee, Nicholas Lenson, Paul Manish, James P. McMahon, Jim Tuttle, Brian Rose, Jake O'Donnell, and Gerardo Ian Tosca. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate it. I think that's about it. Thanks again to the Ludlow Thieves for our intro and outro music, All the Money. So, yeah, go check them out on Spotify or Tidal or wherever it is that you listen to music, or go buy a record in a record store. For Ian, I'm Chris. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums soon with more activity than the Red Sox had this trade deadline. Thanks, everybody.